Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? And we are just getting things going. And basically, I had a note from someone the other day who said they tried to catch the stream and they saw the please stay tuned thing that I put up on the stream and didn't hear me speaking at all because I had muted it in order to get ready for the stream and all. And so basically, I'm taking that to heart, and I am going to be looking. Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to be staying live, and so if anybody comes in, I can acknowledge them while I'm not recording. So, I'm just gonna take a little sip here, and then get my social media out. For some of you early birds, you'll be here a little bit, and then we'll get started. So, I preloaded all my social media. It's so weird the way that you have to do these things now. So we will do this. There we go. And we will do this. And we will do this. Oh, wrong one. This one. And we will do this. Which, of course, is the one thing. And we will go to here. And yeah, I've loaded up all of my Discord channels that I'm going to post in. Oh, interesting. I got to fix that picture. And go here. And here. All right. I think I've got everything covered. We'll see how that goes. So we got a couple minutes before we get started. How's everybody doing if you're showing up early? Good to see you tonight. If you do happen to be in the chat room, one of the things I'd like to know is whether you can hear the crackling fire. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sample recording here. And I will stop the recording. And I will pause the fireplace. And go back to videos here. Let's see, we'll open that with VLC. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sample recording here. I'm going to do a sample recording here. Interesting, that is not happening underneath it. So the question that I have for you is, when I start this up, the fireplace in the background, I'll make that full screen too. Can you hear the audio of the fireplace crackling? Dank Angus, welcome to the stream. If you don't feel like chatting, that's cool. It's going to be a couple more minutes before we start the story, or continue the story, rather. If you do feel like chatting a little bit, okay. So can you hear the crackling fireplace sound in the background? Just barely. Okay. I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Is that better? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to record it. I don't think it's coming through the desktop audio, so... Or coming through the recording, anyway. So let me check something here. Okay. That's alright. Not a big deal either way. So, Dan Kangas, is this your first time in the stream? Oh, well, welcome. Hopefully, you'll have a good time. We're picking up the book in the middle because this is the third stream so far, and we've been doing 3 or 4 chapters per night. We will be working on chapter 8 of Tom Swift and his motorcycle. Excuse me. So one of the things I am going to say, well, I'll wait until it's top of the hour to preface all of this. Get things going here. Get the recording starting. I am actually, so the whole point of this, and since it's the top of the hour, we can start talking about this a little bit more. The whole point of this is I wanted to read books that have 2 focuses. One, that they're in the public domain for licensing issues, but 2, that appeal to nerd culture. And so the Tom Swift series of books started in 1910, and it was the earliest that I could think of that really appealed to kind of the nerd geek culture. Not so much. I mean, Jules Verne was around and doing the sci-fi thing, but this was like Tom Swift was definitely a nerd of his time. He was an inventor, an innovator, dealt with like future tech. I mean, the motorcycle had only been around for like 20 years at the time that this book was written, if I remember correctly, and so he seems to fit the mold. And so I guess that's all one thing. The second thing was I really wanted to create a place where I could read as if I were reading to my kids. So I am not trying to be an audiobook narrator. I am just reading to my kids, or imagine if your grandparents were the ones that read to you when you were a kid, that kind of thing. Sorry about the mic knock. That kind of thing where you just chill out, relax, and listen to a story. That's kind of it. That's the main goal. So, with that, and thank you. So, what the format of this is, I'll intro the chapter, read the chapter, stop, answer some questions, and basically talk with the chat room, and then read another chapter, and we go back and forth. No more than about an hour. An hour is kind of the sweet spot. So, with that, we're going to get started. Welcome to Storytime with Kurt. On our last episode, Tom had found a person whose mule-drawn wagon had gone out of control and had crashed. And we're picking up at that point. Oh, before I get started, I mentioned this on the last episode. I'm going to mention it now. There is a lot of language of the time that this was written that I originally was going to just read as it's written, and it is considered so racist now, I can't do that. I can't. So I am going to adapt it. I'm going to read it in the least offensive way possible. And I understand if that's not your thing, that's cool. I get it. But I can't read it the way it's written. I can't. It doesn't feel right to me. And frankly, if I was reading this to my kids, I probably would adapt it as well. So we'll pick this up at this point. And I'm adapting a lot of the language and stuff as on the fly. I've not pre-read this, so bear with me. Chapter 8. Suspicious Actions. "Are you hurt?" asked Tom as he leaned his motorcycle against the fence and stood by the man. "Hurt?" repeated the man. "I'm killed, that's what I am. I ain't got a whole bone in my body. Good Lord, I'm suddenly in an awful state. Would you mind telling me if my mule is still alive?" "Of course he is," answered Tom. "He isn't hurt a bit. But why can't you turn around and look for yourself?" "Oh, no, sir. I can't. I can't look around at all," replied the man. "Well, why not?" "Why not? I'm so stiff and nearly broke that if I turn my head around, it'll surely twist off my body. Nope, I'm not going to turn around." "But are you sure my mule is okay?" "Yeah, he's not hurt a bit, and I'm sure you're not. I didn't strike you hard, for I'd almost stopped my machine. Try to get up. I'm positive you'll find yourself all right. Sorry it happened." "Oh, that's all right. Don't mind me," went on the man. "It was my fault for getting in the road. But that mule Boomerang, suddenly the most outrageous quadruped that ever circumlocuted. Wow, circumlocuted. Okay, boy, that's... I don't know anybody who's ever said those words. Circumlocuted. Okay, back to the story. "Why do you call him Boomerang?" asked Tom, wondering if the man was really hurt. "Why do I call him Boomerang? Did you ever see the Australian men in the circus with the crooked sticks they call boomerangs?" "Well, yeah, I've seen them." "Well, Boomerang, my mule, he's just like that. He's crooked to begin with, and another thing, you can't ever tell when you start him up which way he's going to land up. That's why I call him Boomerang." "I see. It's a very proper name. But why don't you try to get up?" You think I can?" "Sure, try it. By the way, what's your name?" "My name? Why, I was christened Eradicate Andrew Jackson Abraham Lincoln Sampson. But most folks generally call me Eradicate Sampson. And some don't even go to that length. They just call me Rad for short." "Eradicate," mused Tom. "That's an odd name. Why were you called that?" "Well, you see, I eradicate the dirt. I'm a cleaner and a whitewasher by profession, and somebody gave me that name. They said it was fitting and proper. So I kept it ever since. Yep, I'm Eradicate Sampson, at your service. If you got any chicken coops you want cleaned out, or any stables or fences you want whitewashed, I guarantee satisfaction." "Well, I might find some work for you to do," replied the young inventor, thinking this would be as good a means as any as placating him. "But come on now, let's try to see if you can't stand. I don't believe I broke any of your legs." That's kind of an odd turn of a phrase. Any of your legs? Like one of the three that he might have? Who knows? "Well, I guess not. I feel better now. So, where's that work you were speaking of?" And Eradicate Sampson, now that they seemed to be a prospect of earning money, rose quickly and easily. "See, I told you you're all right," exclaimed Tom, glad to find the accident had no serious consequences. "Yep, I guess I am. So where'd you say you had some whitewashing to do?" Well, no place in particular, but there's always something that needs doing in our house. If you call, I'll give you a job. Oh, I'll be sure to call, and Eradicate walked back to where Boomerang was patiently waiting. Tom told the man how to find the Swift home and was debating with himself whether he ought not to offer Eradicate some money as compensation for knocking him into the air, when he noticed that he was tying one wheel of his wagon fast to the body of the vehicle with a rope. "What are you doing that for?" asked Tom. "Got to get downhill with this load of fence posts. If I didn't, it'd be right on the heels of Boomerang, and whenever he feels anything on his heels, he acts like a circus mule." "Well, why don't you use your brake? I see you have one on the wagon. Use the brake to hold back going downhill." "Excuse me, Mr. Swift, but you don't know that brake. It doesn't work at all. Nope, I gotta rope the wheel." Tom was interested at once. He made an examination of the brake and soon saw why it wouldn't hold the wheel. The foot lever was not properly connected by the brake bar. It was a simple matter to adjust it by changing a single bolt, and Tom did this with the tools he took from the bag on his motorcycle. The man looked on in open-mouthed amazement, and even Boomerang peered lazily around as if taking an interest in the proceedings. "There," said Tom at length as he tightened the nut. "That brake will hold now, and hold any wagon on any hill. You won't need the rope to wheel. You didn't have the right leverage on it." "Excuse me, Mr. Swift, what?" And Eradicate leaned forward to listen deferentially. "I said you didn't have the right leverage." "No, Mr. Swift, excuse me, but you made a slight mistake. I've never had any leverage on this wagon. It ain't that kind of wagon. I once drove a livery rig, but that was some time ago. I haven't worked for the livery stable in some time now. That's why I know there ain't no livery on this wagon. So you'll excuse me, but I'm sure that you are slightly mistaken." "All right," said Tom, not thinking it was worthwhile to explain what he meant by the lever force of the brake rod. "Let it go at that. Livery or no livery, your brake will work now. I guess you're all right. Now don't forget to come around and do some whitewashing." And seeing that the man was about to mount the seat and start off Boomerang, who seemed to have deep-rooted objections about moving, Tom wheeled his motorcycle back to the road. Eradicate Sampson drove his wagon a short distance and then suddenly applied the brake. It stopped short, and the mule looked around as if surprised. "It works, Mr. Swift," called the man to Tom, who was waiting on the results of his little repair job. "It absolutely works." "Oh, I'm glad of it." "Man, you are a conjuring man when it comes to fixing wagons. Did you ever work for a blacksmith?" "No, not exactly." "Well, goodbye, Eradicate. I'll look for you someday next week." And with that, Tom leaped on his machine and speeded off ahead of the man in his rig. As he passed the load of fence posts, the youth heard Eradicate remark in awe-stricken tones, "Oh my gosh, you're going like the wind. And to think that I was almost hit by that monstrous machine and not hurt. Oh, things are suddenly happening. Here we go, Boomerang." "This machine has more possibilities in it than I suspected," mused Tom. "But one thing I've got to change, and that is the gasoline and spark controls. I don't like them the way they are. I want a better leverage, just as Eradicate needed on his wagon. I'll fix them too when I get home." He rode for several hours until he thought it was about dinner time, and then heading the machine towards home, he put on all the speed possible, soon arriving where his father was at work in the shop. "Well, how goes it?" asked Mr. Swift with a smile as he looked at the flushed face of his son. "Fine, Dad. I scooted along in great shape. Had an adventure, too." "You didn't meet any more of those men, did you? The men who were trying to get my invention?" asked Mr. Swift apprehensively. "No, indeed, Dad. I simply had a little run-in with a chap named Eradicate Andrew Jackson Abraham Lincoln Sampson, otherwise known as Rad Sampson, and I engaged him to do some whitewashing for us. We do need some whitewashing done, don't we, Dad?" "What's that?" asked Mr. Swift, thinking his son was joking. Then Tom told of the happening. Yes, I think I can find some work for Eradicate to do, went on Mr. Swift. There is some dirt in the boiler shop that needs eradicating, and I think he can do it, but dinner's been waiting some time now. We'll go in now, or Mrs. Baggert will be out after us. Father and son were soon at the table, and Tom was explaining what he meant to do to improve his motorcycle. His father offered some suggestions regarding the placing of the gasoline lever. "I'd put it here," he said, and with his pencil he began to draw a diagram on the white tablecloth. "Oh, my goodness, Mr. Swift!" exclaimed Mrs. Baggert. "Whatever are you doing?" And she sprang up in some alarm. "What's the matter? Did I upset my tea?" asked the inventor innocently. "No, but you're soiling a clean tablecloth. Pencil marks are so hard to get out. Take a piece of paper, please." "Oh, is that all?" rejoined Mr. Swift with a smile. "Well, Tom, here's the way I would do that." And substituting the back of an envelope for the tablecloth, he continued the drawing. Tom was looking over his father's shoulder interestedly when Mrs. Baggert, who was taking off some of the dinner dishes, suddenly asked, "Are you expecting a visitor, Mr. Swift?" "A visitor? No. Why?" asked the inventor quickly. "Because I just saw a man going into the machine shop," went on the housekeeper. "A man? In the machine shop?" exclaimed Tom, rising from his chair. Mr. Swift also got up, and the two hurried from the house. As they reached the yard, they saw a man emerging from the building where Mr. Swift was constructing his turbine motor. The man had his back turned toward them, and seemed to be sneaking around as though desirous of escaping observation. "What do you want?" called Mr. Swift. The man turned quickly. At the sight of Mr. Swift and Tom, he made a jump to one side and got behind a big packing box. "That's odd," spoke Tom. "I wonder what he wants." "I'll soon see," rejoined Mr. Swift, and he started on a run towards where the man was hiding. Tom followed his father, and as the two inventors reached the box, the man sprang from behind it and down the yard to a lane that passed in back of the Swifts' house. As he ran, he was seen to stuff some papers in his pocket. "My plans! He's stolen some of my plans!" cried Mr. Swift. "Catch him, Tom!" Tom ran after the stranger, whose curious actions had roused their suspicions, while Mr. Swift entered the motor shop to ascertain whether anything had been stolen. End of chapter 8. Alright, so we're going to check in with the chat room right now. How's everybody doing tonight? Commander Roop, Nipser. We are moving quite along there. It's looking like it's about 15 minutes per chapter. Okay. Hey, how you doing, Nipser? Hope you're enjoying yourself. It has been a long time. Hope everything's going well for you. All right. Okay. So we are going to go back to this. Everything's going great here. Just reading some books. Okay, and we'll continue with Chapter 9. Previously, from Chapter 8 of Tom Swift and his motorcycle, Tom ran into a man with his motorcycle, basically, drove him off the road, made sure he was all set, got back home, told his father the story, and saw someone appear to steal some plans out of the workshop. And now, Chapter 9, A Fruitless Pursuit. Down through the yard, Tom speeded in and out among the buildings, looking on every side for a sight of the bold stranger. No one was to be seen. He can't be very far ahead, thought Tom. I ought to catch him before he gets to the woods. If he reaches there, he has a good chance of getting away. There was a little patch of trees just back of the inventor's house. Not much of a woods, perhaps, but that's what they were called. I wonder if he was some ordinary tramp, looking to see what he could steal, or if he was one of the gang after Dad's invention, thought Tom as he sprinted ahead. By this time, the youth was clear of the group of buildings and in sight of a tall board fence which surrounded the Swift estate on 3 sides. Here and there, along the barrier, were piled up old packing cases, so that it would be easy for a fugitive to leap upon one of them and get over the fence. Tom thought of this possibility in a moment. I guess he got over ahead of me, the lad exclaimed, and he peered sharply about. I'll catch him on the other side. At that instant, Tom tripped over a plank and went down, full length, making quite a racket. When he picked himself up, he was surprised to see the man he was after dart from inside a big box and start for the fence, near a point where there were some packing cases piled up, making a good approach to the barrier. The fugitive had been hiding, waiting for a chance to escape, and Tom's fall had alarmed him. Here, hold on there. Come back, cried the youth as he recovered his wind and leaped forward. But the man did not stay. With a bound, he was up on the pile of boxes, and the next moment he was poised on the top of the fence, before leaping down on the other side, a jump at which even a practiced athlete might well hesitate. The fleeing stranger paused and looked back. Tom gazed at him and recognized the man in an instant. He was the third of the mysterious trio whom the lad had seen in the Mansburg restaurant. Wait a minute. What do you want sneaking around here? Shouted Tom as he ran forward. The man returned no answer, and an instant later disappeared from view on the other side of the fence. He jumped down, thought Tom. A big leap, too. Well, I've got to follow. This is a weird proceeding. First one, then the second, and now the third of those men seemed determined to get something here. I wonder if this one succeeded. I'll soon find out. The lad was up on the pile of packing cases and over the fence in almost record time. He caught a glimpse of the fugitive running toward the woods. Then the boy leaped down, jarring himself considerably, and took after the man. But though Tom was a good runner, he was handicapped by the fact that the man had a start of him, and also by the fact that the stranger had had a chance to rest while hiding for the second time in the big box, while Tom had kept on running. So it is no great cause for wonder that Mr. Swift's son found himself being distanced. Once, twice he called on the fleeing one to halt, but the man paid no attention, and didn't even turn around. Then the youth wisely concluded to save his wind for running. He did his best, but was chagrined to see the man reach the woods ahead of him. I've lost him now, thought Tom. Well, there's no help for it. Still, he did not give up, but kept on through the patch of trees. On the farther side was Lake Carlopa, a broad and long sheet of water. If he doesn't know the lakes there, thought our hero, he may keep straight on. The water will be sure to stop him, and I can catch him. But what will I do with him after I get him? That's another question. I guess I've got a right to demand to know what he's doing around our place, though. But Tom need not have worried on this score. He could hear the fugitive ahead of him, and marked his progress by the crackling of the underbrush. I'm almost up to him, exulted the young inventor. Then at the same moment he caught sight of the man running, and a glimpse of the sparkling water of Lake Carlopa. I've got him! I've got him! Tom almost cried aloud in his excitement. Unless he takes to the water and swims for it, I've got him. But Tom did not reckon on a very simple matter, and that was the possibility of the man having a boat at hand. For this is just what happened. Reaching the lake shore, the fugitive, with a final spurt, managed to put considerable distance between himself and Tom. Drawn up on the beach was a little motorboat. In this, after he'd pushed it from the shore, the stranger leaped. It was the work of but a second to set the engine in motion, and as Tom reached the edge of the woods and started across the narrow strip of sand and gravel that was between the water and the trees, he saw the man steering his craft towards the middle of the lake. "Well, I'll be jiggered," exclaimed the youth. "Who would have thought that he'd have a motorboat waiting for him? He planned this well." There was nothing to do but turn back. Tom had a small rowboat and a sailing skiff on the lake, but his boathouse was some distance away, and even if he could get one of his craft out, the motorboat would soon distance it. "He's gone," thought the searcher regretfully. The man in the motorboat did not look back. He sat in the bow, steering the little craft right across the broadest part of Lake Carlopa. "I wonder where he came from and where he's going," mused Tom. "That's a boat I never saw on this lake before. It must be a new one. Well, there's no help for it. I've got to go back and tell Dad I couldn't catch him." And with a last look at the fugitive, who, with his boat, was becoming smaller and smaller every minute, Tom turned and retraced his steps. End of Chapter 9. So take a little bit of a break here to check out the chat room. Thank you so much for the sub there, 3D and Chainmail. I appreciate it. And Zane Kyber, good to see you tonight. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's enjoying things tonight. We got through the hard part of the book so far, anyway, and I think things are going all right. So I did remember that I am in the wrong view for the story, so I will change that back and we'll continue on. Oh, good. I love it when that happens. All right. And we'll go here. And we'll change back. There we go. Take a drink and we'll continue on. Previously on Tom Swift and his motorcycle, Chapter 9, we had somebody go into the workshop of the Swifts, and it appeared that they stole something. The thoughts are maybe the plans for the turbine engine. So Tom chased him up to a lake, and the dude got away with a motorboat. And Tom didn't have anything like that to chase him with, so he had to turn back and go home. Chapter 10, Off to Albany. "Did you catch him, Tom?" asked Mr. Swift eagerly when his son returned, but the inventor needn't but a glance at the lad's despondent face to have his question answered without words. "Never mind," he said. "There's not much harm done, fortunately." "Did he get anything? Any of your plans or models, Dad?" "No, not as far as I can discover. My papers in the shop were not disturbed, but it looks as if the turbine model had been moved. The only thing missing seems to be a sheet of unimportant calculations. Luckily, I had my most valuable drawings in the safe in the house." "Yet, that man seemed to be putting papers in his pocket, Dad. Maybe he put some copies of some of your drawings." "Well, that's possible, Tom, and I admit it worries me. I can't imagine who that man is unless—" "Why, he's one of the 3 men I saw in Mansburg in the restaurant," said Tom eagerly. "2 of them tried to get information here, and now the 3rd one comes. He got away in a motorboat," and Tom told how the fugitive escaped. Mr. Swift looked worried. It was not the first time attempts had been made to steal his inventions, but on this occasion a desperate and well-organized plan appeared to be on foot. "What do you think they're up to, Dad?" asked Tom. "Oh, I think they're trying to get a hold of my turbine motor, Tom. You know, I told you that the financiers were disappointed in the turbine motor. They bought it off of another inventor. It doesn't work. To get back the money they spent in building an expensive plant, they must have a motor that is successful. Hence their efforts to get control of mine. I don't know whether I told you or not, but some time ago I refused a very good offer for certain rights in my invention. I knew it was worth more. The offer came through Smeek and Catch, the lawyers, and when I refused it, they seemed much disappointed. I think now that this same firm and the financiers who have employed them are trying by all means in their power to get possession of my ideas, if not the invention and model itself. Well, what can you do, Dad? Well, I must think. I certainly must take some means to protect myself. I've had trouble before, but never any like this. I did not think those men would be so unscrupulous. Do you know their names? No, only from that telegram we found, the one where the first stranger dropped it. One of them must be Anson Morse. Who the others are, I don't know. But now must make some plans to foil these sharpers. That's an odd turn of phrase, huh? Foil these sharpers. I mean, I get the general feel of it, but that's just kind of odd turn of phrase. I may have to call on you for help, Tom. And I'll be ready any time you call on me, Dad, responded Tom, drawing himself up. Can I do anything for you right away? No, I must think out a plan. Then I'm going to change my motorcycle a bit. I'll put some more improvements on it. And I will write some letters to my lawyers in Washington and ask their advice. It took Tom the remainder of that day and part of the next to arrange the gasoline and spark control of his machine to his satisfaction. He had to make 2 small levers and some connecting rods. This he did in his own particular machine shop, which was fitted up with a lathe and other apparatus. The lathe was run by power coming from a small engine, which was operated by an engineer, an elderly man to whom Mr. Swift had given employment for many years. He was Garrett Jackson, and he kept so close to his engine and boiler room that he was seldom seen outside of it except when the day's work was done. One afternoon, a few days after the unsuccessful chase after the fugitive had taken place, Tom went out for a spin on his motorcycle. He found that the machine worked much better and was easier to control. He rode about 15 miles away from home and then returned. As he entered the yard, he saw, standing on the drive, a ramshackle old wagon drawn by a big mule, which seemed at the time, Tom observed him, to be asleep. I'll wager that's Boomerang, said Tom aloud, and the mule opened his eyes, wiggled its ears, and started forward. Whoa, Boomerang! Exclaimed a voice, and Eradicate Sampson hurried around the corner of the house. That's just like you, said the man, moving when you're not supposed to, and then he caught sight of Tom. He exclaimed, Why, if it isn't that young Mr. Swift. Good Lord, that livery brake you done fixed on my wagon suddenly is good. I can go down the steepest hill without roping the wheel. Glad of it, replied Tom. Did you come to do some work? Yes, sir, I did. I found I had some time to spare, and I think there might be some whitewashing I could do. You see, I only live about 2 miles from here. Well, I guess you can do a few jobs, said Tom. Wait here. He hunted up his father and obtained permission to set Eradicate at work cleaning out a chicken house and whitewashing it. The man was soon at work. A little later, Tom passing saw him put the whitewash on thick. Eradicate stopped at the sight of Tom and made some curious motions. What's the matter, Brad? Rad? Wow, I'm flipping over those words tonight. What's the matter, Rad? Asked the young inventor. Well, the whitewash it persists in running down the brush handle and into my sleeve. I'm soaking wet from it now, and I have to stop every once in a while because my sleeve gets full. Tom saw what the trouble was. The white fluid did run down the long brush handle in a small rivulet. Tom had once seen a little rubber device on a window cleaning brush that worked pretty well, and he decided to try it for Eradicate. Wait a minute, Tom advised. I think I can stop that for you. The man was very willing to take a rest, but it didn't last for long, for Tom was soon back at the chicken coop. He had a small rubber disc with a hole in the center, the size of the brush handle. Slipping the disc over the wood, he pushed it about halfway along, and then, handing the brush back to the man, told him to try it that way. "Did you just put a charm on my brush?" asked Eradicate somewhat doubtfully. "Yeah, some sort of a charm. Try it now." The man dipped his brush in the pail of whitewash and then began to spread the disinfectant on the sides of the coop near the top. The surplus fluid started to run down the handle, but, meeting that piece of rubber, came no further, and dripped off on the ground. It did not run down the sleeve of Eradicate. "Well, that suddenly works fine now," cried the man. "You sure are a pert gentleman, all right. Now I can work without stopping and emptying my sleeve all the time. I am very obliged to you." "You're welcome, I'm sure," replied Tom. "I think someday I'll invent a machine for whitewashing, and then—" "Oh, don't do that. That and making dirt disappear is my only profession. Don't go inventing no machine, Mr. Swift." "All right, I'll wait until you get rich." Then you're going to be waiting a powerful long time," chuckled Eradicate, and he went on with his whitewashing. Tom went into the house. He found his father busy with some papers at his desk. "Ah, it's you, is it, Tom?" asked the inventor, looking up. "I was just wishing you would come in." "What for, Dad?" "Well, I've got quite an important mission for you. I want you to go on a journey." "A journey? Where?" "To Albany. You see, I've been thinking over matters, and I've been in correspondence with my lawyers in regard to my turbine motor. I must take measures to protect myself. You know, I've not yet taken out a complete patent on the machine. I've not done so because I didn't want to put my model on an exhibition in Washington. I was afraid some of those unscrupulous men would take advantage of me. Another point was that I had not perfected a certain device that goes on the motor. That objection is now removed, and I'm ready to send my model to Washington and take out the complete patent." "But I thought you said you wanted me to go to Albany." "So I do. I'll explain. I've just had a letter from Reed and Crawford, my Washington attorneys. Mr. Crawford, the junior member of the firm, will be in Albany this week on some law business. He agrees to receive my model and some papers there and take them back to Washington with him. In this way, they'll be well protected. You see, I have to be on my guard, and if I send the model to Albany instead of the national capital, I may throw the plotters off the track, for I feel that they are watching every move I make. As soon as you or I should start for Washington, they would be on our trail. But you can go to Albany unsuspected. Mr. Crawford will wait for you there. I want you to start day after tomorrow." "All right, Dad. I can start now if you say so." "No, there's no special need for haste. I have some matters to arrange. You might go to the station and inquire about trains to the state capital." "Am I going by train?" "Certainly. How else could you go?" There was a look of excitement in Tom's eyes. He had a sudden idea. "Dad," he exclaimed, "why couldn't I go on my motorcycle?" "Your motorcycle?" "Yes, I could easily make the trip on it in one day. The roads are good, and I would enjoy it. I can carry the model back of me on the saddle." Boy, that's clunky. I think he means I can carry the model in back of me on the saddle. "It's not very large." "Well," said Mr. Swift slowly, for the idea was a new one to him, "I suppose that part would be all right. But you've not had much experience riding the motorcycle. Besides, you don't know the roads." "I can inquire. Will you let me go, Dad?" Mr. Swift appeared to hesitate. "It'll be fine," went on Tom. "It'll be fine," went on Tom. "I would enjoy the trip, and there's another thing. If we want to keep this matter secret, the best plan would be to let me go on my machine. If those men are on the watch, they will not think that I've the model. They'll just think that I'm going for a pleasure jaunt." "Well, there is something in that," admitted Mr. Swift, and Tom, seeing that his father was favorably inclined, renewed his arguments until, The inventor finally agreed. "It'll be a great trip," exclaimed Tom. "I'll go all over my machine now to see that it's in good shape. You get your papers and model ready, Dad, and I'll take them into Albany for you. The motorcycle will come in handy." But had Tom only known the dangers ahead of him and the risks he was to run, he would not have whistled so light-heartedly as he went over every nut and bolt on his machine. 2 days later, the valuable model, having been made into a convenient package and wrapped in waterproof paper, was fastened back of the saddle on the motorcycle. Tom carefully pinned inside an inside pocket. Oh, inside an inside. Tom carefully pinned in an inside pocket the papers which were to be handed to Mr. Crawford. He was to meet the lawyer at a hotel in Albany. "Now, take care of yourself, Tom," cautioned his father as he bade him goodbye. "Don't try to make speed, as there's no special rush. And above all, don't lose anything." "I'll not, Dad." And with a wave of his hand to Mr. Swift and the housekeeper, who stood in the door to see him off, Tom jumped into the saddle, started the machine, and then, after sufficient momentum had been attained, he turned on the gasoline and set the spark lever. With rattles and bangs, which were quickly subdued by the muffler, the machine gathered speed. Tom was off for Albany. End of chapter 10. So let's go back to the chat room here. And we'll switch scenes again. Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody good? Another TV viewer? Good to see you. So, I don't know who's actually listening and watching, but if you are able to chat in the chat room, how are you enjoying the story so far? Particularly if you've been around for the whole time. And we're going to do one more chapter. And that should wrap it up for tonight. But thank you for hanging. I really appreciate it. Why did it do that? That's so crazy. Sometimes I kind of hate Windows 10. Alright. We'll flip this back. Awesome. Previously on Tom Swift and his motorcycle, chapter 10. So basically, after Tom had tried to chase down the guy who took something from the workshop, they came up with a plan to take the model and get the complete patent for the turbine engine and go to Albany instead of Washington, D.C. And Tom's going to take it by motorcycle. And we'll see what happens. Chapter 11. A Vindictive Tramp. Though Tom's father had told him there was no necessity for any great speed, the young inventor could not resist the opportunity for pushing his machine to the limit. The road was a level one and in good condition, so the motorcycle fairly flew along. The day was pleasant, a warm sun shining overhead, and it was evident that early summer was crowding spring rather closely. "This is glorious," exclaimed Tom aloud as he spun along. "I'm glad I persuaded Dad to let me take this trip. It was a great idea. Wish Ned Newton was along, though. He'd be company for me. But, as Ned would say, there are two good reasons why he can't come. One is that he has to work in the bank, and the other is that he has no motorcycle." Tom swept past house after house along the road, heading in the opposite direction from that in which lay the town of Shopton and the city of Mansburg. For several miles, Tom's route would lie through a country district. The first large town he would reach would be Centerford. He planned to get lunch there, and he had brought a few sandwiches with him to eat along the road in case he became hungry before he reached the place. I hope the package containing the model doesn't jar off, mused the lad, as he reached behind to make sure that the precious bundle was safe. Dad would be in a bad way if that should disappear. And the papers, too. He put his hand to his inner pocket to feel that they were secure. Coming to a little downgrade, Tom shut off some of the power, the new levers he had arranged to control the gasoline and spark working well. I think I'll take the old wood road and pass through Pompville, Tom decided after covering another mile or two. He was approaching a division in the highway. It's a bit sandy, he went on, and the going will be heavy, but it will be a good chance to test my machine. Besides, I'll save 5 miles, and while I don't have to hurry, I may need time on the other end. I'd rather arrive in Albany a little before dusk than after dark. I can deliver the model and the papers and have a good night's sleep before starting back. So the old wood road it will be. The wood road, as Tom called it, was a seldom used highway, which originally was laid out for just what the name indicated, to bring wood from the forest. With the disappearance of most of the trees, the road became more used for ordinary traffic between the towns of Pompville and Edgefield. But when the state built a new highway connecting these two places, the old road fell into disuse, though it was several miles shorter than the new turnpike. He turned from the main thoroughfare and was soon spinning along the sandy stretch, which was shaded with trees that in some places met overhead, forming a leafy arch. It was cool and pleasant, and Tom liked it. "It isn't as bad as I thought," he remarked. "The sand is pretty thick, but this machine of mine appears to be able to crawl through it." Indeed, the motorcycle was doing remarkably well, but Tom found that he had to turn on full power, for the big rubber wheels went deep into the soft soil. Along Tom rode, picking out the firmest places in the road. He was so intent on this that he didn't pay much attention to what was immediately ahead of him, knowing that he was not very likely to meet other vehicles or pedestrians. He was considerably startled, therefore, when, as he went around a turn in the highway where the bushes grew thick, right down to the edge of the road, to see a figure emerge from the underbrush and start across the path. So quickly did the man appear that Tom was almost upon him in an instant, and even though the young inventor shut off the power and applied the brake, the front wheel hit the man and knocked him down. "What's the matter with you? What are you trying to do, kill me? Why don't you ring a bell or blow a horn when you're coming?" The man had sprung up from the soft sand where the wheel from the motorcycle had sent him and faced Tom angrily. Then the rider, who had quickly dismounted, saw that his victim was a ragged tramp. "I'm sorry," began Tom. "You came out of the bushes so quickly that I didn't have a chance to warn you. Did I hurt you much?" "Well, you might have. It isn't your fault that you didn't," and the tramp began to brush the dirt from his ragged coat. Tom was instantly struck by a curious fact. The tramp, in his second remarks, used language more keeping with his character, whereas, in his first surprise and anger, he had talked much as any other person would. "You fellas ain't got no right to them machines like lightning along the roads," the ragged chap went on, and he still clung to his use of words and expressions current among his fraternity. Tom wondered at it, and then, ascribing the use of the better language to the fright caused by being hit by the machine, the lad thought no more about it at the time. There was occasion, however, when he attached more meaning to it. "I'm very sorry," went on Tom. "I'm sure I didn't mean to. You see, I was going quite slowly, and—" "You call that slow? When you hit me and knocked me down?" demanded the tramp. "I ought to have you arrested, that's what. And I would if there was a cop handy." "I wasn't going at all fast," said Tom, a little nettled that his conciliatory words should be so rudely received. "If I'd been going full speed, I'd have knocked you 50 feet. "It's a good thing. I'm glad you wasn't going like that," and the tramp seemed somewhat confused. This time, Tom looked at him more closely, for the change in his language had been very plain. The fellow seemed uneasy and turned his face away. As he did so, Tom caught a glimpse of what he was sure to be a false beard. It was altogether too well kept a beard to be a natural one for such a dirty tramp as this appeared to be. That fellow's disguised, Tom thought. He's playing a part. I wonder if I'd better take chances in springing on him that I'm onto his game. Then the ragged man spoke again. I suppose it was part of my fault. I didn't know that any guy was coming along one of them buzz machines, or I'd been more careful. I don't suppose you meant to upset me. And he looked at Tom more boldly. This time his words seemed so natural, and his beard, now that Tom took a second look at it, so much a part of himself that the young inventor wondered if he could have been mistaken in his first surmise. Perhaps he was once a gentleman and has turned tramp because of hard luck, thought Tom. That would account for him using good language at times. Guess I'd better keep still. Then to the tramp he said, I'm sure I didn't mean to hit you. I admit I wasn't looking where I was going, but I never expected to meet anyone on this road, and I certainly didn't expect to see any... And he paused in some confusion. He was about to use the term tramp, and he hesitated, not knowing how it would be received by his victim. Oh, that's all right. Call me a tramp. I know that's what you were going to say. I'm used to it. I've been a hobo so many years now that I don't mind. The time when I was a decent chap, though, but I'm a tramp now. Say, you couldn't lend me a quarter, could you? He approached closer to Tom and looked quickly up and down the road. The highway was deserted, nor was there any likelihood that anyone would come along. Tom was somewhat apprehensive, for the tramp was a burly specimen. The young inventor, however, was not so much alarmed at the prospect of a personal encounter as that he feared he might be robbed, not only of his money, but the valuable papers and model he carried. Even if the tramp was content with taking his money, it would mean that Tom would have to go back home for more, so doing so would postpone his trip. So it was with no little alarm that he watched the ragged man coming nearer to him. Then a bright idea came into Tom's head. He quickly shifted his position so that he brought the heavy motorcycle between the man and himself. He resolved, if the tramp showed a disposition to attack him, to push the machine over on him, and this would give Tom a chance to attack the thief to better advantage. However, the hobo showed no evidence of wanting to resort to highwayman methods. He paused a short distance from the machine and said, admiringly, That's a pretty shebang you have. I guess that means machine or something? That's weird. I've never heard that term before. Yes, it's very fair, admitted Tom, who was not yet breathing easily. Can you go far on it? 200 miles a day, easily. For Pete's sake, and I can't make that riding on the blind baggage. But that's because I put so much off on it. But say, are you going to let me have the quarter? I need it, honest I do. I haven't had anything to eat in 2 days. Now, how about that? Thinking that 25 cents will get you something to eat. That's certainly reminiscent of an older time. The man's tone was whining. Surely he seemed like a genuine tramp, and Tom felt a little sorry for him. Besides, he felt that he owed him something for the unceremonious manner in which he had knocked the fellow down. Tom reached his hand into his pocket for some change, taking care to keep the machine between himself and the tramp. Are you going far on that thingamajig? Went on the man as he looked carefully over the motorcycle. To Albany, answered Tom, and the moment the words were out of his mouth, he wished he could recall them. All his suspicions regarding the tramp came back to him, but the ragged chap appeared to attach no significance to them. Albany? That's in Jersey, ain't it? He asked. No, it's in New York, replied Tom, and then to change the subject, he pulled out a $50 and handed it to the man. As he did so, Tom noticed that the tramp had tattooed on the little finger of his left hand a blue ring. That's the stuff. You're a regular millionaire, you are, exclaimed the tramp, and his manner seemed in earnest. I'll remember you, I will. What's your name, anyhow? Tom Swift, replied our hero, and again he wished he had not told. This time he was sure the tramp started and glanced at him quickly, but perhaps it was only his imagination. Tom Swift, repeated the man musingly, and his tones were different from the whining ones in which he had asked for money. Then, as if recollecting the part he was playing, he added, I suppose they call you that because you ride so quickly on that machine. But I'm certainly obliged to you, Tom Swift, and I hope you get to Albany in Jersey in good time. He turned away, and Tom was beginning to breathe more easily when the ragged man, with a quick gesture, reached out and grabbed hold of the motorcycle. He gave it such a pull that it was nearly torn from Tom's grasp. The lad was so startled at the sudden exhibition of vindictiveness on the part of the tramp that he did not know what to do. Then before he could recover himself, the tramp darted into the bushes. I guess Happy Harry, that's me, has spoiled your ride to Albany, the tramp cried. Maybe next time you won't run down poor fellows in the road. And with that, the ragged man, shaking his fist at Tom, was lost to sight in the underbrush. Well, if that isn't a queer end-up, mused Tom. He must be crazy. I hope I don't meet you again, Happy Harry, or whatever your name is. Guess I'll get out of this neighborhood. And that's the end of chapter 11. And that will do it for tonight. For those of you listening, the next chapter is chapter 12, called The Men in the Auto. And we will put a bookmark right there. Thank you so much for hanging with me in the chat room tonight and for listening to this live. Makes it a lot easier to read to somebody who's actually there. And we will see you next time, which will be Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see in the panels below in this Twitch chat room that there's a calendar and tell you when the next episodes are happening. And if you want to know when everything is happening at any given point, go ahead and follow me at VO by Kurt on Twitter, or go ahead and click that follow button right here on Twitch, and you'll be notified each and every time I go live. And with that, have a great evening.